All right. Welcome, everybody, to the PharmD Finance Show. So we're also doing this in partnership with the PharmD Podcast Network because Derek here also does that as well for the PharmD Podcast Network. So, all right, Derek, thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's always my pleasure, my man. Let's get right into it. So, great topic today on whether or not to pay off your mortgage sooner or not, right? So, fascinating. I'm not currently a homeowner, but I was back in 08, right before the crash, which I'm glad I didn't pay it off then. But give me your thoughts. Are you froze, bud?
Can you hear me? Mine is
Nope,
kind of
you're good now. Yep, you're good now.
going off and on.
We're good.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, paying your mortgage off early is something that a lot of people are interested in learning more about because it's something that they see as an immediate value add to their financial life, right? The less time you have to worry about paying your mortgage, the more time you have that extra cash flow that you can deploy to do all the other fun things you wish you could do if you didn't have a mortgage to pay to begin with, right? Except this equation has got a lot more complicated over the last 12 to 18 months. And the reason for that is a lot of people refinance their mortgage and have mortgage rates in the low to middle to high twos, which is unprecedented if you look at the history of mortgage rates. And now, just a year and a half later, those same interest rates are over 7%. So the crowd that goes, you know what, I want to pay off my mortgage right away, is starting to take a step back and go, is there a better alternative considering that the interest rate I'm paying on right now is so extremely low in that it hasn't been this low in the history of mortgage rates? Is there a better alternative? And that's where the tug and war comes in of what people should be doing with their extra cash flow, whether that's investing the money or using it to pay their mortgage off quicker.
Fascinating. So, what camp do you sit in?
So let's just go over an example. I think that will help. So
Okay.
let's just say that a year and a half ago, you bought a $300,000 house and your interest rate on that mortgage, 30-year mortgage, was 2.5%, right? Your mortgage payment for the next 360 months is going to be like $1185, something like that. And if you were to make those payments on time for that 360-month duration, you would have total payments equaling $426,000, roughly right around there, which means you'd pay $126,000 in interest over the course of that loan, which is a lot of extra interest. It's over 1/3 of what the original balance was. And this is why it's so enticing for a lot of people to want to prepay on their mortgage. Or let's just say instead of paying the regular mortgage payment on that $300,000 loan, you pay an extra $200 per month. Well, now, according to my calculations, that mortgage will then be paid off in 289 months, which is a little under 6 years faster. You're only going to pay about $100,000 extra in interest, which means you're going to save yourself over $26,000 by paying that mortgage off faster than you needed to at a 2.5% interest rate and 6 years earlier. So a lot of people look at that, they go, that's a no-brainer. I take $200 extra every single month and put it toward that, knowing that in roughly 24 years, I'm going to earn myself on that extra payment each month about $26,000. However, there is an alternative people should be aware of, and that's the opportunity cost of not using that additional $200 elsewhere. Before I jump into there, I think it's important to note that if you have a mortgage and you're a third of the way through or halfway through, it's not as impactful to pay your mortgage off faster at that point if you haven't been doing it since the beginning. So the way mortgages work, whether it's an auto loan or a mortgage or way loans work in general, is it's very front heavy from an interest standpoint. Where the back half of the loan usually is you paying down the principal more than actually paying toward interest. So if you think you're going to make regular payments and then wait until you advance in your career and earn more money to start prepaying harder on that mortgage, it's probably not going to provide the type of benefit you hope. So I want to put that out there that if you're 10 years, 15 years into a 30-year mortgage and you want to prepay, it's probably not going to be as big of a benefit as you think it is.
Okay, so that was kind of like maybe your cutoff would be like if you're already 10 years in, not going to work. But if you're maybe 1 or 2 years in and you're like, okay, that's still going to be more beneficial?
You'd have to do the math, and it'd be
Okay.
pretty easy to figure out what the break-even point is. But just each additional year you wait to prepay on your mortgage, the benefit of making those prepayments is actually going to be less.
Got it.
Where we talked about, if you had that 30-year mortgage and you paid the extra $200 a month, you'd have about $100,000 of extra interest paid toward that mortgage, right? Well, let's just say same scenario, but you don't pay extra on that mortgage until you're halfway through, until you're 15 years through, and then you pay an additional $500 a month. In that case, you will have your mortgage paid off around the same time. However, you will have $106,000 payments toward that mortgage, which is $6,000 more than if you would have started paying the $200 at the beginning instead of paying $500 extra halfway through.
Makes sense. So, what is it when you are at the 7% interest rate, like people are now buying houses?
I apologize, Sean. I did not hear that because we're cutting in and out. Can you say that one more time?
What would be the, I was hoping that was the case because I'm like, I've never stumped you before. So what would the, like same scenario. Now you have a house at 7%. It almost sounds like that's an easy answer to that one, but I want to hear what your thoughts are.
It becomes a lot easier as your interest rate grows to pay it off earlier. And as future opportunities to utilize that money elsewhere, as far as rate of return on that money decreases. Okay. So interest rates that are 7% right now, in my opinion, I think it's an absolutely no-brainer to use any additional cash flow to prepay that mortgage, as long as you're making sure you're taking care of your future self as well within moderation. But that's a phenomenal way to utilize extra cash flow, is to pay off that mortgage if you're sitting there with a 7% interest rate on it.
Yeah. Now, when someone's doing this, I mean, it's going to be one. Can you kind of ebb and flow and flex those spendings? Like, okay, this month you had a surplus, so you take that and put it down, and another month you may have less to put down, so it's only maybe 100 or 200 towards that principal.
Yeah, again, if you're starting early in the mortgage's life, so in those first couple of years you're prepaying, any additional prepayments, whether it's bigger or smaller in any given month, is going to be beneficial. I just want to point out, though, that the opportunity cost of using that money and prepaying a mortgage, even if it's earlier in the life of the mortgage, compared to investing, if your interest rate is in the 2s, may not be in your best interest long term. And the example I use is, let's just say you took that regular $300,000 mortgage we talked about, you made regular payments. And instead of taking your $200 extra and putting it toward your mortgage, you invest that money. And let's just say you get an average rate of return of 6%. Well, after 289 months, that investment account that you were putting the $200 in is going to be right around $130,000 as far as a total. So you take that $130,000, you subtract, take 15% off to pay your taxes. And then what you're left with is around 120, give or take. And that mortgage that you were paying on should have a balance around 80. So you can take that 120, pay off that 80, and have around $30,000, $40,000 left over in your pocket, and have the mortgage paid off in the exact same time as you did if you would have prepaid it early with that additional 200. So interest rates matter big time, and what you think you can get over the long term as far as a rate of return on that money if you don't invest it in paying off your mortgage early is important as well. So that's all part of the equation.
That's awesome. And that's it sounds like you need a financial advisor to tell you that, because that's a lot of different calculations you're gonna have to put together.
Well, then there's different things you have to think about as well that have nothing to do with money. It goes, how risk adverse are you? If you're not very risk adverse and you don't think you're going to do a good job of being able to take that extra 200 and invest it consistently, then prepaying your mortgage may be your best opportunity, because then you don't have to worry about what the markets do, because prepaying your mortgage is going to be simple, and that's going to be structured and fixed through the life of that prepayment. Or maybe you're going to be a lot more riskier, or maybe you have a higher risk tolerance, I should say. And maybe you want to dump more money in investments because you think you can earn 3, 4, 5 times more than what you're paying on that 2.5% interest rate within a mortgage. And then the other thing that's really important to look at is prepaying into your mortgage is great, but it reduces your overall liquidity. Where if you wanted to tap into that mortgage later in life, it's going to actually cost you money to do that. But if you take that $200 extra a month and invest it somewhere else, Well, that's liquidity you can tap into at any time and use for any other opportunities that may come up. So there's give and take outside of the dollar and cents that you're going to want to incorporate in making that decision.
No, I think that you have a strong argument for both right there, but it comes down to looking at your own finances, looking at your own plan and your own, it's really, everyone's different when it comes to future goals and things like that. So, but this is a lot of good stuff to think about. And all right, any other closing thoughts on that, Derek? Because I know, I mean, that was a lot there for people to digest in those 10 minutes.
Yeah, whatever decision you settle on, feel confident in it. I know a lot of people who make a decision in this situation that they know isn't what's best for them from a bottom line standpoint, but it allows them to sleep easier at night knowing that they're going to have that mortgage paid off earlier. And if that's what brings you most peace of mind, and that is above and beyond the dollars and cents you could possibly make a little more elsewhere or taking advantage of another strategy, that's just fine. Don't beat yourself up for that whatsoever. And then I will piggyback off of your point. Bring in a professional that you trust who can help you talk through all of the variables that go into making a big decision like this. Having a home is one of the biggest assets and one of the biggest investments people will make in their lifetime, and making sure you're making smart decisions that encompass everything from a personal financial aspect is really, really important.
It's awesome. Great advice, Derek, as always. Love it. All right. Well, we will be here next week. You can catch Derek here every Monday at 11:30 Pacific. What is that? 1:30, 2:30? No.
1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern.
Thank you. You can also find him, Derek Delaney from PharmD Financial Planning is his company. He's got all his great content hosted right in there in RPH Alley for all the pharmacy professionals there to take a peek at. So thank you much. We'll talk soon, Derek.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah. Bye-bye.